Across this video by Scientific Lee, and he shows a small scale dome of water from a magnetic field. The research in the cause of the ME has led me to investigating the firmament, with me coming across some disturbing evidence. But first I'm going to show how it is possible for a dome to be made from water by Scientific Lee. All we need to do is scale it.
Those are just two pieces of marble that I've put in there. Oh yes, there's the magnet, so it's a good eighth of an inch below the waterline. So now that goes, so I can see it. Just come looking for me light, where's the light? Pull that off the light, pull the light. Let's have a bit more light. Just don't know if I've got the right light in. Oh, well, there's lighting of some sort. Alright. Well, that's it then, let's point it later. Alright, so let's take some more water out because I know there's a lot in here. So that's another one of them. I'll just feel where it is. Okay, still an eighth, so we'll pour another that out. Another one. About a millimetre. Alright, I'll leave that and see if a dome appears in the middle, because them rings on the outside are raised, so it's already bulging at the very far edges.
It looks like the longer you leave it, the more the dome grows. Did you know stars can now be created in a lab? It's called sonoluminescent star in a jar. Let's have a quick look at this being done.
It looked like a star in the heavens.
Seth Putterman called it the star in a jar, a tiny spot of bright light contained in a flask of liquid. This star in a jar is made when a sound wave is passed through a small bubble inside a flask of liquid. And this sound wave makes the bubble do something remarkable. First it expands, then it collapses. And this collapse happens so violently that vapor molecules trapped inside the bubble slam together and heat up so much that the bubble gives off an incredible burst of heat and light, several thousand times a second, giving the appearance of a star.
I want you to take another look at the bubble before it implodes. This next bit of footage is me taking a picture and changing the colours to see what else is there. Check out what I found. This next bit is footage of the 2015 total eclipse taken from a plane.
15, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Viel Spaß!
They look like bubbles to me. What do you think? I believe the firmament is voltage flowing through water, and I am going to show you supporting evidence for that. You just need to think about scaling things up to the size of the dome.
Now here's another example of walking on water. This is a lizard from the, Central America, and because it walks on water, it's called the Jesus Christ lizard. And of course, you'll say, well, I know the answer to this. The surface tension is high on water, but the common idea of surface tension is that there's a single molecular layer of water at the top, and this single molecular layer is sufficient to create enough tension to hold whatever you put there. I think this is an example that doesn't fit that. And here's another example, 2 beakers of water. You put 2 electrodes in, and you put high voltage between them, and then what happens is a bridge forms, and this bridge is made of water, a bridge of water, and this bridge can be sustained as you move one beaker away from the other beaker as much as 4 centimeters, sustained essentially indefinitely. How come we don't understand this? So what I mean is that there are lots of things about water that we should understand, but we don't understand. And so we really don't know. No. Also, the phases of water. Now, we've all learned that there's a solid phase, a liquid phase, and a vapor phase. However, 100 years ago, there was some idea that there might be a 4th phase somewhere in between a solid and a liquid. Sir William Hardy, a famous physical chemist, 100 years ago exactly, professed that there was actually a 4th phase of water, and this water was kind of more ordered than other kinds of water, and in fact had a gel-like consistency. So the question arose to us, all of this was forgotten because people began, as methods improved, to begin to study molecules instead of ensembles of molecules, and people forgot about the collectivity of water molecules and began looking, the same as in biology, began looking at individual molecules and lost sight of the collection. So we thought, we're going to look at this because we had some idea that it's possible that this missing link, this 4th phase, might actually be the missing link so that we can understand the phenomena regarding water that we don't understand. So we started by looking somewhere between a solid and liquid. And the first experiments that we did that get us going is we took a gel, that's the solid, and we put it next to water. And we added some particles to the water because we had the sense that the particles would show us something. And sure enough, you can see that what happened is that the particles began moving away from the interface between the gel and the water, and they just kept moving and moving and moving, and they wound up stopping at a distance that's, well, roughly the size of one of your hairs. Now that may seem small, but by molecular dimensions, that's practically infinite. It's a huge dimension. So we began studying the properties of this zone, and we called it, for obvious reasons, the exclusion zone, because practically everything you'd put there would get excluded, would get expelled from the zone as it built up, or instead of exclusion zone, EZ for short. And so we found that the kinds of materials that would create or nucleate this kind of zone, not just gels, but we found that practically every water-loving or so-called hydrophilic surface could do exactly that, creating the EZ water. And as the EZ water builds, it would expel all the solutes or particles, whatever, into the bulk water.
The firmament. All particles move to the bulk of the water. Which would be the top of the firmament. So is this where all the mud comes from?
However, in the history books, our teachers have told us that rats carrying fleas from China aboard wooden ships brought the plague from China to Europe, and it's total bullshit. That's not the truth. I go by what the historians were saying that were alive at the time, and not what we're being told today. So organic materials being fallen from the sky is nothing new. Charles Fort documented many of them. But in 1902, which was the last year of the Phoenix, this is what happened all around the world. And in some incidents in Oceania, there were ship captains that had to call all hands on deck just to push with brooms and whatever tool they could find all the red mud off their ships before their ships capsized. And these are written in the captain's logs. That's how bad it was. And Australia was one of the hardest hit for this red dust phenomena in 1901 and 1902.
One of the strangest places on the ocean's floor was only just discovered in the 1990s. I might agree as one of a handful of people to ever see it in person.
Without a doubt, one of the most amazing things that I had ever seen in the bottom of the ocean, it was while filming for Blue Planet, it was in the Gulf of Mexico. I noticed there's something out in the distance, couldn't tell exactly what, but it looked like a dark band. And as we approached it, the dark band became a donut. I saw this donut that was black in the center. What the heck is that? And so as we get closer and closer to it, I noticed that the black band had what appeared to be kind of steam over it. And then I looked, and there was water lapping against the shoreline. This band was a ring of mussels. And inside the ring of mussels was a lake. And it's like, wait a minute, I'm already underwater. We went out over the water in this lake and tried to descend in it and bounced off. It was so super saline and dense that the submarine couldn't go down in it. We literally bounced off. And as we bounced off, we sent ripples heading back to the shoreline. It was insane. I've never seen anything like it.
And we began learning about the properties, and we've spent now quite a few years looking at the properties. And so it looks something like this. You have a material next to water, and these sheets of EZ layers begin to build, and they build and build, and you just keep building up one by one. And so if you look at the structure of each one of these planes, you can see that it's a honeycomb hexagonal kind of structure, a bit like ice, but not ice. And if you look at it carefully, you can see the molecular structure. So of course it consists of hydrogen and oxygen because it's built from water. But actually, they're not water molecules. if you start counting the number of hydrogens and the number of oxygens, it turns out that it's not H2O. It's actually H3O2. So it is possible that there's water that's not H2O, some phase of water. So we began looking, of course, more into these extremely interesting properties. And what we found is we stuck electrodes into the EZ water because we thought there might be some electrical potential. And it turned out that there's lots of negative charge in that zone. And we used some dyes to seek positive charge, and we found that in the bulk water zone, there was an equal amount of positivity. So what's going on, it looked like, is that next to these interfaces, the water molecule was somehow splitting up into a negative part and the positive part. And the negative part sat right next to the water-loving material, and the positive charges went out beyond that blot. It explains, for example, the cloud. And the cloud, it's the positive charge that draws these negatively charged EZ shells together to give you a condensed cloud that you see up in the sky. In terms of the water droplets, the reason that these are sustained on the surface for actually sometimes as long as tens of seconds, and you can see it. If you're in a boat and it's raining, you can sometimes see this on the surface of the lake. These droplets are sustained for some time. The reason they're sustained is that each droplet contains this shell, this EZ shell. And the shell has to be breached in order for the water to coalesce with the water beneath. Now, in terms of the Jesus Christ lizard, the reason the lizard could walk is not because of one single molecular layer, but there are many EZ layers lining the surface, and these are gel-like. They're stiffer than ordinary surfaces. So therefore, you can float a coin on the surface of the water.
A coin can be floated on this fourth phase of water. Again, scale that up to the dome, and I believe it will become the impenetrable dome. I'm now going to show a talk on chemtrails by a doctor in chemistry.
Yeah, a lot of this spraying started back after World War II, and the nominal thing is that it is a way of protecting the albedo of the Earth. That by spraying these geoengineered chemicals in the sky, somehow it's going to increase the reflectivity of the Earth, and so much heat won't come in and that. I don't know that I believe that explanation, but that's what they've been giving us. And it's a little strange. I tend to think that maybe what they're spraying is magnetic chaff, and that they want to change the vibrational frequencies that are out, because if it seems like this planet has a poisonous atmosphere, maybe the aliens won't attack us.
It's a little strange because he can't think of anything that spraying magnetic chaff to change the vibrational frequency is being sprayed for. But I bet it wouldn't be strange if he knew about the firmament being made from the fourth phase of water, and these chemtrails are to latch onto the oxygen atoms after being carried up there by the magnetic frequencies that CERN creates. They tried in the 50s and 60s to blow a hole through the firmament. Do you think they gave up? They waited till things was understood more.
Compound in the whole world, 99 out of every 100 molecules is this one. And water is the major thing on everything on this planet, and that should be the ultimate focus of place where we can clean up and make a significant impact. But now let's talk about those chemtrails which spray out and then diffuse out. And by the fact that I was in the movie What in the World Are They Spraying with Michael Murphy back about 6-7 years ago, I became noted as the resident expert. And the three things we're really worried about are barium, strontium, and aluminum. And actually, the form that they are in the sprays are as the oxides. So we have barium oxide, strontium oxide, aluminum oxide, but notice aluminum oxide is Al2O3, and that's because the aluminum with its 3+ charge has to be balanced to the oxygen with its -2 charge. And so to get these balanced, that's why we need 2 aluminums and 3 oxygens. And this is called alumina, and that's one of the major components of what they're spraying. So why are these 3 the big bad guys? The major component of a biological system is water, but copacetic. Now, magnesium is fairly small. Calcium is about the same size as potassium. Strontium is a little bigger than calcium, and barium is a little bigger than strontium. But you see, if we were to substitute a strontium in for this magnesium, and you know, that's what I think we're doing with the chemtrails, so we put strontium in it. Now, this is a bigger atom than was in it with the atom that belonged. And so, because of that, that's going to push this out of whack. This is going to have to be back here, and it's going to start breaking bonds and causing chemistry because you're putting a big molecule in place of something that was smaller, and everything has to spread out to accommodate it. The barium is even bigger than the strontium, and so now you can see when you get a barium into the lattice, first, it displaces a whole lot of things in the lattice. Second, it hangs on better so that you can't get it out of the lattice once it's there. So as where normal chemistry might have calcium substituting in for another calcium, and that'll work for a little while, and then another calcium will come in. Once a strontium or a barium comes into a porphyrin ring, it gets stuck. Now, yes?
Why are those getting substituted? What is it that's allowing? I mean, we're surrounded with all kinds of metals and chemicals all the time. Why are those getting sucked into the ring?
This is an example of how the specific mechanism of a ring was only chosen because it's convenient to talk about. We could easily substitute it onto this molecule down here, in which case we have a calcium which is a lot bigger than a sodium, but here at least it's on the end of the molecule and can get swept off. The real problem with it is that, as I said, these things form as oxides, and they're stable in their charged form as oxides, and so when they stick to an oxygen, they think they're in their normal inorganic place. They're not really ready to go leaving the site they're at, and that's what holds them in, is the fact that the bigger molecules have a more finite attraction for the site than the smaller molecules do, and so the smaller molecules can't knock a bigger one out. Eventually that does happen.
Is that gravity?
Not necessarily. I think it a lot has to do with the size of the fit and the cavity that it's in and how much distortion it caused in a molecule. Because if you twist a molecule and it really is out of shape, the forces to put it back into shape are going to kick that off. But if you just make a subtle change and you make everything loose, what happens is that the components that get loose don't function as reliably, and so your mechanism for doing something like breathing and intaking oxygen might slow down because you've got things cluttering some of your sites because they wouldn't let loose like the molecule was supposed to.
Now, I'm no expert in chemistry, but what I was picking up from that talk was changing a smaller atom for a bigger atom will distort the structure and make it weaker. Now, there has been many floods in the past. There's been the mud flood that has happened all over the world and not that long ago. So is there a plan to flood the Earth to bring the population down from 7.5 billion to 500 million, just as it says on the Georgia Guidestones? I think this needs more investigation, but we need some doctoring chemistry to find out these answers. I really do believe this is how the floods are being done, which means it is not God who is doing this. You are probably asking yourselves, why would they be doing this? Because they would be doing it to themselves. The answer to that is, we are living in a matrix. The Mandela effect is a side effect to them doing this. When man's intelligence has grown, they need to send us back to the Stone Age. All because they do not want to share control of the matrix with us humans. We could turn the Earth into paradise, which I am going to show you some more of my earlier videos to show how I can make that claim. First, my 2-minute video virtually proving that we live in a simulation. Take a look at this picture. If I was to ask a friend to walk from pole 1 to pole 2, from my viewpoint, I would see him walk past the sun. But from his viewpoint, the sun would stay at the same angle to him. As you can see, this would put the sun behind the clouds for him, putting him in the shade. But I'm still seeing the sun shining on him, from my viewpoint. So I'm seeing my friend with the sun on him, while at the same time and place my friend is seeing himself in the shade. This is two different realities at the same time and place in the same reality. How is this possible? The answer: we all see the sun from our own viewpoint, which means we see the position of the sun different to each other. And that means we see different places lit up by the sun to each other. This is only possible if we live in a simulation. We are all in our own little matrix, which needs to be connected to the collective consciousness for us to be able to interact with each other. Hope this makes sense. I'll start with explaining how the Mandela effect is being done. The changes that are happening to our reality suggest we are in a matrix, which we are. Which means there's a hard drive to hold the information to our reality. Through an experiment showing water holds memory, I know where the hard drive is. In the experiment, a listening device was used to record the electromagnetic field coming from the water to later reconstruct the DNA that was once in the water from the recording. This told me magnetic fields hold memory, so could this magnetic field be the hard drive to our reality? I got my answer seeing what looked like magnetic frequencies being aimed at Earth's magnetic field. Let's take a quick look at this being done by SpaceX.
With its own mind, it's just shooting through the sky. This is absolutely incredible. Again, you're watching the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket launch from Vandenberg Air Force Base, this visible from Bakersfield.
Did you see the many little spirals of magnetic frequencies shooting off Falcon 9?
And it does something here in just a moment that is really weird. Almost looks like something you would see in a sci-fi movie. Check this out. It starts spinning and it leaves these systematic lines in the sky. Almost looks like a radio tower sending out signals, like right there. Look at that. How weird is that? And this video was taken on the fly. She did not have a tripod. She managed to keep the camera very still and had a absolutely spectacular view of this impressive rocket launch that again left a large cloud in the sky that looked like a nova, some sort of a supernova, but the rocket's continuing on here, going in more of a slanted vertical.
I believe powerful magnets going off in a combination of positive and negative states to represent the ones and zeros in computer code. They do say at the basis of our reality it is the same as computer code in ones and zeros.
Pictures that contain all the information of a set of equations that are related to string theory. And it's even more bizarre than that, because when you then try to understand these pictures, you find out that buried in them are computer codes just like the type that you find in a browser when you go surf the web.
You're saying your attempt to understand the fundamental operations of nature leads you to a set of equations that are indistinguishable from the equations that drive search engines and browsers on our computers.
That is correct. So,
wait, I have to just be silent for a minute here. So you're saying as you dig deeper, you find computer code writ in the fabric of the cosmos?
Into the equations that we want to use to describe the cosmos, yes.
Computer code?
Computer code, strings of bits of ones and zeros.
Strings of bits of ones and zeros. Let's have a look at how data is stored in a computer to see if we can learn anything.
Imagine an airplane flying 1 millimeter above the ground and circling the Earth once every 25 seconds while counting every blade of grass. Shrink all that down so that it fits in the palm of your hand, and you'd have something equivalent to a modern hard drive, an object that can likely hold more information than your local library. So how does it store so much information in such a small space? At the heart of every hard drive is a stack of high-speed spinning disks with a recording head flying over each surface. Each disk is coated with a film of microscopic, magnetized metal grains, and your data doesn't live there in a form you can recognize. Instead, it is recorded as a magnetic pattern formed by groups of those tiny grains. In each group, also known as a bit, all of the grains have their magnetizations aligned in one of two possible states, which correspond to zeros and ones. Data is written onto the disk by converting strings of bits into electrical current fed through an electromagnet. This magnet generates a field strong enough to change the direction of the metal grain's magnetization.
The magnet is strong enough to generate a field that flips the magnetic bits. A magnetic field, just like SpaceX and CERN have been doing. Now, magnetic fields can carry the information, but what is acting like the magnetic bits? Let's carry on watching how a computer hard drive works and see if we can find the answer.
To turn it back into a useful form, much like a phonograph needle translates a record's grooves into music. But how can you get so much information out of just zeros and ones? Well, by putting lots of them together. For example, a letter is represented in 1 byte, or 8 bits, and your average photo takes up several megabytes, each of which is 8 million bits. Because each bit must be written onto a physical area of the disk, we're always seeking to increase the disk's areal density, or how many bits can be squeezed into 1 square inch. The areal density of a modern hard drive is about 600 gigabits per square inch, 300 million times greater than that of IBM's first hard drive from 1957. This amazing advance in storage capacity wasn't just a matter of making everything smaller, but involved multiple innovations. A technique called the thin film lithography process allowed engineers to shrink the reader and writer. And despite its size, the reader became more sensitive by taking advantage of new discoveries in magnetic and quantum properties of matter.
quantum properties of matter. So what is in matter that could act like the magnetic bits? In all matter, it's the number of protons to the number of electrons that determine whether it has a positive or negative charge. And I believe it is the positive and negative charge that is acting like the magnetic bits. So you see, we could actually create paradise on this earth, and the dimensional beings from other dimensions aren't going to let humans have control of the matrix, because if they do, we could also control their reality, and they're not going to let that happen unless we make it happen. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was educational, and I hope it gets your mind thinking. So until next time, please like, share and subscribe. Thank you.